Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to admit as we go along, but as it's now 3 minutes past 7, could everybody briefly unmute yourselves?
Yeah,
Consider myself unmuted, George.
Unmuted, fantastic. And here we go, 3, 2, 1. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, George. That was rubbish.
Fantastic. That was better than silence, which is what I got when I didn't tell you to unmute yourself. So brilliant. Could you mute yourselves back up, please? Thank you very much indeed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to Soho Whiskey Club at home once again. Hopefully, as we were discussing just then, hopefully there won't be too many more of these before we can get you back live in the club doing tastings and, if anything, at the very least, having a wee dram. So we tonight have a tasting which I have very much been looking forward to. I am, I think, about a month off from being the manager of the club for 3 years. And I remember very well when I first walked into the Soho Whiskey Club to meet up with old George and to come and see the club. He opened a bottle up that had just come off a tasting, and he poured me a very large measure of it, and it was a Glendronach. And that is the last time that Glendronach have been at the Soho Whiskey Club. So although we're not at the Soho Whiskey Club, this is one that I've been looking forward to for a very, very long time. And I am thrilled to say that we have the Irish and Malts Ambassador from Brown-Forman here, Mick Brown. Hello, Mick.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Sorry?
Said thanks for having me.
Oh, mate, thank you for coming. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. And also Jack Geffing from Mangrove. Thank you, Jack, for helping to organise all this. I know that I've been prodding you guys for a long time. And I really appreciate you coming through. So nobody wants to hear me bang on. Let's get cracking. Ladies and gentlemen, he's promised to tell the story about Allardyce and the prostitutes. Ladies and gentlemen, from Brown-Forman and representing Glendronach and walking us through them, the brilliant Mr. Mick Brown.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. I hope I can live up to that fabulous intro. I really, really do. 3 years has been a long time, so I hope this lives up to your expectations. If any of you were there 3 years ago, from chatting away to George, I know that you're all huge fans of Glendronach, and I'm going to be waxing stuff that you've already heard. Please feel free to stop me and ask me any questions, and hopefully I can answer all of them. But let's get started with our first whiskey off the bat, and we can do history interspersed with tasting here, and we'll have a really good night. So first up, you have our Glendronach 8-year, Helene. If you poured it all already, maybe I'll just say at this point, if you want, pour a couple ahead so it gives them a little bit of time to kind of breathe. Most of them will be okay, but especially the 18, get that in a glass. Pronto, so it can have a bit of time to open up, because I'm sure loads of you will know it is a big dram. I'm really excited about this lineup. I love that we're starting with one of our ex-bourbon expressions. I know it's not particularly traditional for us, and it's a little bit controversial in some circles, but I think it's a really, really nice example to show that we can do. We can dip our toe in that as well. We're not just full sherry, and when we go to mess around with a little bit of ex-bourbon, we can certainly make a delicious drop. So 8 years old, a blend of sherry and ex-bourbon cask. So let's just have a wee look at the color. So we're looking at like kind of a light amber, which you would expect because we've got a bit of bourbon in there. So we're not bringing quite as much color from the sherry. We'll have a little nose here. We're going to get all of those kind of like bright, vibrant notes. So we're going to get that kind of oak. Obviously, we're going to get vanilla. We're going to get this kind of butterscotch notes coming through. But we're getting that classic ginger. You know, that ginger that you get from so many Glendronach expressions is still there. And I think one thing to note about this dram is that there are so many familiar aspects in this dram that you'll know from full sherry Glendronach expressions. And that's down to distillery character, the spirit character that we create at Glendronach. It's so strong that no matter what cask we're putting in, we're still getting those familiar notes that you'd kind of expect. From the sherry cask, obviously, you're going to get those kind of raisins. We're on a light raisin, like this golden raisin. We're not quite in the, fig and date territory, which is so familiar for some of the older expressions. I'll have a little taste and see what you think. So it is quite crisp. It's nice, and it's a very nice, like, kind of refreshing whiskey, in contrary to something like the 18, which is so deep and so rich. This is a nice little contrast, a nice little introductory sipper, and a lovely way to kind of start off. At the front palate, for me, it is all of that kind of that honey and that barley note, with that sweet sherry, so you're getting those familiar kind of golden raisin notes from that PX cask. But we're still on the back palate feeling some of the drying aspects from that American oak, but also that the tannin, the wood tannin coming from the Oloroso sherry as well. So like Glendronach, it delivers so much on the palate at different parts of the palate. We're starting off sweeter, we're ending a little bit drier, and that's, I suppose, the skill of using different casks, and in this case, obviously, using the introduction of ex-bourbon cask as well to balance out some of those bigger notes that we find so familiar. The great thing about Glendronach as well is it's about that robust Highland spirit married with these sherry casks, and in this case, ex-bourbon cask. But it's about delivering flavor at different points of the palate. But it's also, and that's something we always talk about, but it's also about having a whiskey that can give you a different flavor when you start going back to it. And I think that's one of the real wonders of Glendronach, that from the start to the finish, if you're sitting over one of these for maybe 15 minutes, half an hour, it starts to change and you start to pick out different notes. As it opens up, maybe as it warms up in your hand, you're starting to pick out some of these lovely notes. I mentioned that barley, and it's there, that sweet barley note. I always go to digestive biscuit when I think of barley, because it's my oldest kind of memory of barley. And it's always there in all of the Glendronach. And I think we attribute that, well, I know we attribute that to our mashing process. So we have like a relatively small mash tun. So we're cooking it in a smaller vessel. We're going in at 65, we're going in at 83, and then we're going right up to 96. The temperatures in that mash tun, trying to extract as much of that sugar as we can, as much of that fermentable sugar. At this point, we're getting as much of that lovely barley flavor as possible. And that's a tribute to the team at the distillery, that you still taste that barley at the end. It's still there, ever present in the whiskey the whole way through. One part of the production in Glendronach never overpowers the other. And even with this introductory at 8 years, you still see that. You still see that the sherry plays a role, and the ex-bourbon plays a role, and the barley coming from that sweet mash is there, but they're all working in harmony. They're all complementing each other and kind of elevating the strength of the whiskey. For 8 years as well, I mean, it's delivering such elegant flavor, it's really delicious. For me, it's all of that lovely oak balanced in with that delicious honey. I'm going to go back in, see if we get anything else. Maybe a little bit of chocolate in there as well. It's very light though. It's very light on that kind of chocolate note. Like I said, buttery, all of that lovely raisins coming through. It's really delicious start. What do you all think? What's your opinions on the 8 year? I'm sure some of you will have some contentious opinions about using ex-bourbon in here.
Yeah, superb. Guys, feel free to unmute yourselves as we go along, or just stick comments in the chat, tasting notes, etc., thoughts on the whiskey. Is the ghost story true about the Spanish casks?
Yes, the ghost story is true. We have a ghost that lives in our distiller's house on site. And the legend is that she came over stored in the sherry cask. I don't know why she was traveling from the sunny, warm climes of Spain to Scotland at the time, but she's come across in a sherry cask in want of I don't know, and want to find a delicious whiskey, and found herself at the distillery and is now just haunting Glen House for forever. I am terrified of ghosts. I don't want to ever experience that at all. I don't believe in them, but if I seen one, I would be running.
When we do 18-year-old when we do 18-year-old tastings at the club, I always use Glendronach as our Highlands whiskey. I love the whiskey, so that's always helpful. And of course, because we're always doing it, we make up more and more elaborate stories about this woman. And the person who could come up with the most elaborate name for her at the end of the week would get a wee dram. There were some pretty interesting names for this Spanish girl. Definitely not Spanish ones.
I don't think that she has a name, so maybe that's something I'll pitch to the distillery team. Maybe we need to give this lady a name. Maybe that's all she wants. Maybe she wants a name and then she can go to the underworld, wherever they go when they're done. Have you poured the 12 yet? We're going to move on to the 12 after this one. If you've got it to hand or you've poured it already.
That one, the 8, I actually for a while stopped putting it on the shelf at the Soho Whiskey Club, because I've got one member who would always come in and drink it. Darian, I know you're on the call. Well, Darian, I'm not going to stop you buying it from the shop today. It's on there for a great price, £34.95, just for you.
Wow. I get a dozen.
Yeah, well, it's an absolute bargain. I'm hoping
it is a bargain.
To be fair, the reason I like it is it goes really well with the cigars. So, you know, it's a nice mix of the sweet and the bitterness of the cigar.
For those of you who've bought quite a lot of whiskey recently, I finally figured out how to just charge you £4.95 so that you don't have to pay £4.95 per bottle that you order. And for those of you who have already purchased and have done multiple delivery charges, drams on me. Sorry about that, but I think it's fixed now. So you can buy as many bottles as you want and it will cost you £4.95 delivery. Buy away.
Please do. Okay, so I've just had a notification my internet connection is unstable, so I hope you can all hear me. I haven't broke up here, no? That's okay, good, fantastic. So now we're going to move on to Glendronach 12 year. This is what you would classically expect from us. This is full sherry maturation for a minimum of 12 years. We're sitting at 48%. This is the quintessential expression of everything that we do at Glendronach. The DNA of this particular whiskey can be found throughout all of the whiskies we're going to taste today. It comes back to that wonderful mash, and it comes back to our lovely saxophone stills, which I'll touch on when we get to some of the other whiskies later. This is what we hang our hat on. I've heard from George, I've heard from other people conducting tastings or trainings, and it's a real compliment to hear that this is what a lot of people use as the benchmark of sherried Highland malt. It's certainly something we are very, very proud of. It has many uses in my home bar. It has a brilliant use in a lovely midweek sipper for sure. It mixes really well in cocktails. It makes a delicious highball. Some of you may say sacrilege, but it makes a banging hot toddy with a little bit of fresh ginger in there as well for those winter nights. Couple of cloves, fresh piece of ginger and some lemon, much like your classic hot toddy. And that complements the ginger note that you're going to get that I mentioned earlier. Plays a part in quite a few of our expressions. And we're sitting here, we've got like a deep amber color. Obviously, we can contribute that to the cask. It's not quite as dark as some of the expressions, but get your nose in there and have a little smell. It's super creamy. First off, for me, I'm getting a lot of sweet fruit notes, and that's that PX cask influence in here. First off, it's coming that sweet fruit for me. That lovely PX. We're sitting raisin fig territory for me here, and then underneath that, it's super creamy. So we're getting that vanilla, maybe that vanilla custard vibe going on. Really lovely. Then again, I'm starting to get some more spice. So we got that ginger I keep mentioning. We got a little bit of clove in there as well. And then just look for maybe some other fruit notes that you might find. The barley sweetness is there, obviously. It's still ever present, coming from that wonderful mash. So delicious. Maybe like a little bit of nut coming in there as well. Maybe like a little hazelnut, maybe a bit of almond, marzipan married with that vanilla, you know. Have a little taste. And
Mick, you said that this is the one that you hang your hat on, and I mean, this is called the original or original. What's Helan mean? The Helan.
Helan, I'm not going to lie, I don't know the translation, and that is terrible of me, but I'm not going to lie to you, okay?
Maybe
that's going to be Scots Gaelic, and me being Irish, I feel quite ashamed that I definitely don't know.
Sorry, I didn't mean to trick you out. Sorry.
It's not your bad. It's mine. I should know exactly what that means, so apologies.
It's gorgeous anyway. I love it.
Yeah, it's really delicious. It's really lovely. I've just had a little taste, and it is that lovely Highland character. You know, it is robust. It is a big whiskey. We're sitting at 12 years. We're punching way above that 12-year mark for what I would expect from a 12-year Highland sherried malt. You mentioned value earlier. This 12-year is such a good value for money whiskey. I don't always base value on money on it's solely price. It's got to do with flavor, and I'm sure you're all the same. It's flavor with price is always your balance on outrageously good. It is indeed, Johnny. And Jacqueline.
Less than 40 quid tonight.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable. Less than 40 quid for a bottle of that is brilliant.
And I think we in this call, you are all going to be exactly on the same page. Like it's stop picking on the Irishman. You are going to be in exactly the same page with me. That is, you're not necessarily looking at age statement as the bearer of quality. You got to taste and you got to get in there. And I just think this is much more than a 12-year-old liquid. But that comes down to the casks. So we're using super high quality casks at Glendronach. You know, these all are also in sherry casks. We're getting the best cask that we possibly can. And that's always been something from the very beginning from James Allardyce, was to use the best cask possible. We've always had this sherry history. Have a little taste again. We'll kind of go through some more of the note. On the nose, like I said, it's that PX to the front. And I think that it's the same on the palate. Well, for me, it is anyway. I'm going to taste it. You know, it starts with that lovely PX sweetness. We're getting all of that lovely aged malt in the center, and then we're on the mid palate, and then it's starting to kind of dry out with the end, and that's that wood tannin kind of drying out. And this is the same thing I was talking to you about earlier. Is how Glendronach gives you delivers flavor at different parts of the palate really distinctly, but none of them are. Yeah. I mean, it's 4 years, and then you'll know in whiskey that's a really long time. We're starting to develop a lot of richer flavors, but we don't have that ex-bourbon in this one. So I'm just referencing a comment that was just made there. We're not using this ex-bourbon here. So these sherry casks, in the terms of Oloroso, adding a certain amount of dryness and lovely tannic element. When the PX adding all of that lovely sweetness and the mouthfeel coming through.
I'm sorry, that's
a reference.
It's shocking.
The lovely Sean Connery.
It's a shocking joke. Behaviour's not Greenwood. There was.
And now I'm kind of going back in. I'm going back in, and I'm starting to get the creamy aspect that I got on the nose, but I'm getting on the palate, and it's really rich and oily and buttery. We're going to go through this range, and by the end of it, it's like you've got. Your mouth is just coated. Your lips are coated with all of the lovely oily spirit that you're gonna be tasting. And already it started. You know, my palate's going mad because it's just so delicious.
Alison wants to know if there's a particular bodega that supplies your casks.
We don't get them from a particular bodega, but we source from different bodegas for our casks.
Perfect, thank you.
And then again, you're going to get some. I get like a fresh orange zestiness coming through. certainly on the nose and then on the palate, and then the finish. I mean, it's still there. I think this is the great thing about Glendronach, is it starts delivering in waves. So I'm getting all of this lovely malt flavor. I'm getting I know what I'm drinking here. I know I'm drinking Highland Spirit. And then I'm going, right, what's coming from that? So I'm getting all of these lovely PX sweetness. I'm getting this orange coming through from cask. I'm getting that tannic element from the Oloroso sherry cask. And all of that oily character that we get from Benraid. Yes, we're developing flavor during our fermentation, and we're getting all of those lovely fruit flavors. You know, you're going to get some cherry later on, for sure, and that's definitely attributed to those fermentation. But it's in distillation that we're really working on this oily character of the spirit. I'm sure you'll all be familiar with the stills that we have at Glendronach. We have 2 wash and 2 spirit stills, relatively small stills. Wash is sitting around 13,000 litres, and the spirit still sitting at around 6,000 litres. So not huge stills, but not small by any stretch. We're onion-shaped stills, so rather than having the nice pear, it's not a flat top, but that rounded flat top, like an onion, means that we're getting a lot of reflux in this still. So we're evaporating all that alcohol, it's bouncing off, we're creating more reflux, we're developing the flavour in the still more and more because we've increased the reflux. Now we've got quite a wide neck because we don't need a narrow neck because we've done all this reflux in the onion still at the bottom. Also why we have a wide neck is because we've got a saxophone shaped line. So we'll do it in here. We're coming in and we're curving around like this and coming down. What does that do? When this alcohol vapor rises in the still, it's reacting off the top of the onion shaped still. Some of it does that, some of it releases up the wide neck. When we get to this top of this line arm, if your line arm's quite straight or angled up, this vapor is happily just going to flow up. You know, reflux isn't encouraged. We're not recondensing that liquid and it's dropping back down. With this saxophone shape still, that's what we're doing. We're making it hard for this vapor to get across the neck. We're increasing that reflux, and we're developing flavor the whole way through. And that's really, really important to the style of Glendronach. Some say that is what makes our style, is that saxophone neck. I believe it's a combination of everything along the way. But certainly, if that neck was a different shape, it would be a completely different style of spirit, you know. And I go back and again, I get like lovely marzipan, you know. That's what I love about it. I wasn't getting that at the start, you know. I was getting all that PX sweetness on the nose. I was getting that raisin and getting a little bit of, you know, date coming through. And now I'm going back and, like I say, I'm getting different flavor profile. I'm getting a little bit of apple. For me, it's like a fresh apple peel, fresh apple skin. Cherry Bakewell, brilliant note, flavor note, fantastic. I would argue that cherry is in every single one of our expressions all the way through. And then that lovely marzipan note coming together and you're going Cherry Bakewell. I think that's the wonderful thing about tasting whiskey, is that you put these notes together and your brain tells you, do you remember that time you had Cherry Bakewell? There you are. That's what I really, really love about whiskey. And with Glendronach, it does it time and time again. Rachel always talks about crescendos of flavor with Glendronach. I think it's really true. You know, you do get a real crescendo of flavor, a real burst of flavor in the mouth, and it just envelops and just covers. Like the oiliness, I can still taste it. I'm not tasting the whiskey as such, but the residue of the flavor of that whiskey is still there on the palate. It's the final sip of that one just before we move on. Has everybody got their 15-year-old poll? Glendronach Revival? We can start to have a little chat.
I have to say, man, that for less than 40 quid is outrageous. That's ridiculous.
It really is. It really is. I don't know how we do it. I really don't. I suppose sometimes demand in certain whiskies and reputation drives them up. Glendronach's nowhere near as big as it should be. But maybe for us, that means that we're getting really great liquid at a really, really competitive price, you know. So let's move on to the Glendronach Revival. Has everybody got one in hand? That is perfectly true, and I don't want to get into that discussion on this call. But whiskey is for drinking, 100%. Especially with some of the with all of our single cask releases, we want them to be drank. We want people to enjoy them. We certainly put so much effort into them that it would be a shame for them to just gather dust.
They're impossible to get. I think Malcolm, the last one, got one bottle. I can't even have them in the club.
Yeah. It's the whiskey world we live in, unfortunately. Allocations go everywhere, and there are conversations had in shops, and unfortunately they don't always reach us.
Yeah, they all go on auction, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's just the way it is. I don't agree with it by any stretch of the imagination. Okay, so let's move on and let's have a wee chat about the 15. Okay, so this is much lauded. This is forever on allocation. I'm so glad we're able to taste it in this session today. We're looking at a little antique bronze kind of going on here. We're on 46%. And again, we're using Oloroso and PX in this expression. So if you've got a little bit of the 12 left, which I'm going to set my drams in front of the bottles because I think it's quite nice to go back and forth. You've got your tasting map there actually, so everything will be in place. It's nice to go back and forth and kind of see the differences in the liquid. And you're going to say, well, because this is in stark contrast to the 12 year. It's still got distillery character. You still recognize it as a Glendronach. It's just really refined. It's really, really well balanced. And this is the different use of cask here. Even on the nose, when you're going between the 12 and the 15, you're smelling a completely different spirit, a completely different whiskey. Get on the nose. That maraschino cherry note is there. I think somebody mentioned the Bakewell tart earlier on. It's there 100%. We're getting all of these kind of blackberry notes, especially as well. All of that fruit. Where does this come from? These lovely fruit notes, these lovely fruit esters. They come from the fermentation. They come from that stage of production. And we're using wooden washbacks at Glendronach, a very traditional distillery. We opened in 1826. We have been open pretty much permanently since then. The Patterson crash didn't really affect us, thankfully. So you go from 1826 up until about 1900, you have the Patterson crash, and a lot of distilleries unfortunately have to close. Some of them, including Ben Rake, which we had to close. Glendronach didn't fall under that. Glendronach managed to keep going and managed to stay alive. We were still using coal until very recently. And it wasn't until the 60s that the distillery got a real modernization under teachers. They expanded the distillery, brought it up to modern standards, still kept the coal-fired stills in action. It wasn't until 2005 that we got rid of coal-fire and we moved on to steam. But yeah, the 15-year-old, lots of coffee, really biscuity. Now, biscuity is like an evolution of that barley, you know. So I'm smelling barley in 12 year really prominently, and then we move on to this, and we're getting to more like a biscuit stage. So we're starting to get that butter, we're starting to get that sugars, we're starting to merge together and giving you this kind of like toasted cereal note, which we're calling biscuity in this case. Any of these things you can attribute to something yourself. If it sounds pretty much similar, that's your flavor profile. That's what you're picking out of it.
These are
lovely
whiskies, Mick, for when you're talking to people about what kind of sherry cask whiskey is against bourbon cask. When you go original 15, 18, that is just such a huge contrast and such a great characterful build. It's amazing. It shows you everything that you need to know about sherry cask maturation.
And I feel like if we weren't so careful in our blending and our use of cask, that could be completely bullied out of the picture by some of those stronger notes. But for me, it's this lovely sweet honey, maybe a little bit of burnt honey coming in there, like a little burnished honey note coming in. along the way, which is really delicious. So let's have a little taste, see what you think. Immediately, the 12-year is big, it's bold. This is so much more refined. Not that being big and bold is a bad thing, it's just a different style. And like you said, George, this shows the difference in how you use the casks and sherry cask maturation and what differences you can do with the use of two simple casks. This is a much more balanced affair. A bit drier on the end, on the finish than the 12. For me, that's more use of Oloroso cask. So we're still getting the lovely sweetness. For me, the Revival is going to be a lot more Oloroso used in this mix rather than PX, whereas for 12, we're going to have a bit more influence of the PX cask in there. So.
This is £57 tonight, which is incredible because, you know, as you said, a lot of these are allocated quite stiffly. They're quite hard to get hold of. We've run out of this a couple of times in the last year and a half. So, I mean, 57 quid is unbelievable.
It's fantastic. It really is. So we're in the 15 again now. Like I said, we were starting on the 12 and it was like these raisiny notes and a bit of date. Now I'm getting like more fig. It's kind of developing a bit more for me. I'm getting that lovely cherry still on the nose. I'm going to have another tasting. Just kind of let it sit there. That malt character, that really robust Highland spirit is always present. You know, getting those lovely fruit notes on the front and to mid palate and finish, I'm starting to really get all of that aged malt. We're starting to get some of those kind of older aged malt flavors coming in. We're starting to get a bit of tobacco. Certainly on that sip there, I'm getting a lovely kind of cigar kind of vibe going on. It's really well balanced though. And I think when you're tasting Glendronach, like I said, every different sip's going to give you something different. One is the whiskey warms and opens, but two is your palate moves through the more obvious flavors that you'll pick up first. Now, if you pick up these flavors at different points, that's just your palate. That's not a negative. You know, you're just getting different flavors. You know, for me, I'm getting those sweeter flavors first, and then I start to move into those kind of drier cigar box a bit. It's just stunning. There's a reason that we brought this back. There's a reason that this didn't disappear completely forever, and it's because it's a really delicious whiskey.
Could you talk to us about the thought process and the reasons behind it disappearing, and then the decision to bring it back?
I think the decision to bring it back, I don't know about the reason and also why it went. The decision to bring it back is because there was such a huge outcry because people missed it so much. You know, they couldn't believe that this whiskey had gone out of production. When you have inventory issues, you have to make really tough decisions on what you want to do. And I think the choice was made that if we couldn't make the same liquid, then we're not going to make it, you know, which I think is a real testament to the powers that be at the distillery, that they said, if we can't do it the way we want, we're not going to do it. The outcry was huge. Tarragon, maybe, lovely, really nice tasting. No, the outpouring was huge, and they realised, well, we got to bring it back. I mean, it was only out for maybe 5 years, I think, so not a hell of a long time. Not a hell of a long time for it to be gone. But yeah, inventory issues were solved, and then it's back. It's not called Revival for that reason, just so you know. Okay. Let's have another little sip. Yeah, what I love about it is that you do have like that Manuka honey that's so present at the start, but now that creaminess, the vanilla is starting, and I'm getting this really lovely kind of maybe like vanilla custard, maybe like baked vanilla custard vibe coming through. And then I'm finishing with lovely spice. So I'm getting a little bit of star anise, a little bit of allspice in there. And that's a testament to those lovely sherry casks that bring all that spice into the mix. Is there any more questions on? It's close between 96 and 98. That That could be true, Paul. I mean, we were closed, but I'll find out for you for sure.
No, I've read somewhere, Michael, that they just run out of 15-year-old because of the gap in production when the distillery was mothballed. I think it was Allied or someone mothballed it, and it was bought over by someone else in 2002.
It was mothballed by Pernod at the time. So that could have that would be the inventory issue that I kind of mentioned. So yeah, we were mothballed by Pernod, but then rebought again.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we going to move on to the 18? This, I hope you've poured. You're all have gonna try this before, I'm sure. This is the sherry bomb. This is the one that everybody mentions. This is the one you always get the questions about. It's a really delicious liquid. Off the bat, you can see the color difference there straight away. You know, we're straight into this antique bronze vibe going on. It is so deep and so rich. I'm not even going to smell it yet. I think we just appreciate the color here, and maybe emphasize as well that this is the first expression that we're going to try tonight that is 100% Oloroso sherry. So we're not using any PX in this mix whatsoever, just Oloroso. And we'll talk about what that does to the whiskey in a minute. I'm going to get a little bit of water in between here.
So this is called Allardyce. This is the one that I was mentioning earlier. And occasionally, depending on how drunk people are towards the middle of the whiskey tastings that we do at the Soho Whiskey Club, and depending on the type of reaction I think I'm going to get, I tell the story probably incredibly inaccurately about how Mr. Allardyce had gone down to do a whiskey tasting. It was like a blind tasting, trying to sell his whiskies, and everybody absolutely canned it. They did not enjoy it, or they said they didn't enjoy it. And he went off very, very disappointed and met up with a couple of hookers, prostitutes, and didn't have any means of paying them, but he gave them Glendronach. Anyway, they loved it. They gave it to their clients, and all of a sudden, Glendronach was incredibly popular. So how much of that is complete rubbish, Mick?
So I'm going to tell you this right now, that I don't know if any of these anecdotes are in any way true. I'm going to tell you the version of events that I know.
That sounds suspiciously scripted.
It's not. It's really not. Like, but this is 200 years ago, you know? Like, stories change within a day, you know, on WhatsApp, you know? Let alone, you know, 100 years ago when somebody's writing stuff on a piece of parchment and sending it with somebody across the country as gossip, you know. Stories change and stories evolve. What I know, and I'm going to be very selective with my words, unlike you, George, is that Allardyce was in Edinburgh trying to flog Glendronach, trying to get bars and taverns to take on his whiskey. It was a rather unproductive day. So he parked up in a tavern, he got drunk. He was a very flamboyant, gregarious character, and he managed to have a troop of fellow drinkers, admirers, their profession, who knows, to drink along with him. He was giving them his whiskey. They loved this whiskey. He left the whiskey with them, which is the part of the story that me and yours are agreeing on. And when he went back up to Valley Ford, he thought nothing of it. But they were then requesting his whiskey in all of these bars because they'd fallen in love with it. They'd fallen in love with this delicious Highland malt. They were asking for this product. Their customers were then asking for this product. And this is the legend of how Glendronach became the well-known established distillery that you know. Honestly, what if that is true? I have no idea. It's definitely not on the website. It's definitely not something that we've researched massively, but it is certainly a really good story.
So one day, a brand ambassador told that exact story, Mick, and Chinese whispers had it, but it ended up in my ears, awfully so. So I take it all back and I apologize.
Now, what you have to remember as well is that what we could say officially as well, that's a very dodgy topic we're on right now, which is why I was very loose with my words, or vague with my words. Anyway, on to the 18, named after Allardyce. Maybe like chat a little bit about how the distillery started here, actually. Allardyce inherited the land, realized at the time, this is, 2 years after the Excise Act, so whiskey is now legal. You have a lot of entrepreneurs and daring people wanting to create distilleries, and he was certainly one of them. He just inherited land, great barley growing land, had a water source, and he thought, why not? So he went into partnership with 3 of his friends, couple farmers, one being like a shop owner, distributor, if I remember correctly. Basically, he had a little network, much like anybody starting a business now. He had a good little network of people who had expertise, and he was the one who had the vision. And he started the distillery from that. I think that's a really nice story in that it wasn't ever intentional. I don't know if many people start a distillery or start into this business intentionally. They just kind of come across it and go, do you know what? That would be cool. Maybe they come from a chemistry background. Maybe they come from a farming background. Maybe they come from trade, and they go, do you know what? I'm going to do it. They fall in love with liquid and they do it. And testament to the man, we're nearly 200 years down the line. We were only closed for a very brief time. And we're still making whiskey much the same as he to make it. Now, older Glendronach examples, and I often get asked this, do you do a lot of peated liquid? Not really. But a lot of people get like a lot of smoke notes going on, and this is probably to the fact that I mentioned before, these kind of coal-fired stills. So you're firing with coal, the heat can be on heat. We mostly use steam jackets these days, right? And steam jackets give you a lovely dram, give you a consistent heat around the bottom of the copper still, which means that heat's distributed evenly, and there's no point in the bottom of that still where some of your sediment is or your liquid is going to start to burn. What happens when it burns? It's that Maillard reaction, which gives you toast, for instance. Like when you're cooking a sauce, you got to keep moving it, or parts of it are going to burn because there's more heat in one part than the other. That can often give the perception of peat, but also it's a coal fire. There's smoke coming off the coal fire. It's going to get into the system. It's going to be all about the distillery. So we do get malt that has a very, very, very small ppm, like pretty much minimal. But some of the older expressions may give you these smoky attributes, and that's probably down to this coal fire, for instance. But yeah, I can't remember where I was going with that, but let's taste this delicious liquid. Okay, so we're sitting at 46%. It's really deep, like I said, like really antique bronze. Get in the nose. As from the color, you're going to expect some really, really rich flavors. So maybe like the PX is there again, obviously, but for me, one of the predominant notes is this molasses treacle. So that kind of black molasses that you get. The one that was always in the back of your granny's cupboard from cooking, and you'd already eaten all the golden syrup. That's what I get from this one. All of those kind of notes coming through. It's really rich. It's really deep. You're getting a lot of orange again. This time the orange is transformed into a candied orange note for me for this one.
A good note.
You really know that you're in for a big chewy whiskey when you smell this. So have a little taste. And
a good note from Dr. P on this is that it's chewy.
Yeah.
Yeah, really lovely and chewy.
Yeah. The first time I ever poured one of these, I think it was about 11 at night, and I'd finished the shift, and I didn't quite anticipate like how long it would take me to kind of sit and enjoy it, because it is so big. This is not a quick whiskey, you're best to kind of enjoy this over a time. And like I said before, it's going to deliver lots of different flavor at different times. So have a taste, because I haven't yet.
Me and a good mate were having a chat about whiskey the other day, and we were saying that certain whiskies feel like you need a knife and a fork to eat them. It's like really big, rich, deep pudding.
Yeah. I get like for me, it's like fruitcake, you know, because you get all of that baked fruit in there as well, but you still get the creaminess. For me, this is the most bullish of all of them, you know. This is the most chewy, the biggest. This is like the naughty middle brother kind of the crew. And that kind of fits with Allardyce's reputation, you know. He was a bit of a character, you know. So you get allspice, you get the raisin transferring from the nose to the palate, which is really delicious. But like I said, we're an 18-year-old liquid here, so we should be expecting a lot more different notes. So for me, you're going to get a lot of leather. It's definitely there. You're going to get like some forms of tobacco notes, but for me, they're all wrapped up in that Rancio distillery notes. So whether it's like Dunnage warehouse floor vibes, musty's a really bad term. You know what I'm talking about here. It's that really well-developed age. Christmas Cake Fest, yeah. I always see Salty Breeze, yeah. Licorice, definitely, yeah, 100% you're getting licorice there, where we got shortbread, licorice, butter pudding, cod liver oil. Oh, I don't want to smell cod liver oil in it now. Not at the minute. I get a lot of like stewed fruit, you know, with this age. Like for me, like it's a like apple plum cooked well down, you know.
Raphael, mate, there is 15 available. It's on the website. Go on and sign into your members area, like you bought the tasting kit, and it's $56.95 today. The 15. This 18 was one of the first whiskies that I ever tried and really liked back when I was working at Milroy's. Back then, it was a lot cheaper. In the last 3 years, it's kind of caught up with the market, and now it's kind of the price that it should be. Today, Malcolm's dropped it back down to below 100 quid. So this is £99, £98.95. It's a fantastic price.
It really is.
I'm sorry, did you just say Malcolm dropped a price?
I know. Well, no argument with him, Noran.
Holy moly.
If you didn't think it was strange times before, now you're confirmed.
Well, exactly, yeah. What's going on?
So yeah, I mean, that's amazing. Malcolm obviously understands that you all want to buy some Glendronach 18, 15, 12 Portwood.
This has been a dreadful tasting for my bank account, mate. I'm not going to lie.
just in time for Easter, you know?
Absolutely. I've given up chocolate. I'm acquiring whiskies instead.
Good man, that's the way forward.
Much better investment.
So.
Much better investment.
Acquiring whiskey is a slippery slope. Wow. It's like going down like the rabbit hole in Alice in Wonderland.
I've already got one cupboard full in the kitchen, and it's been a bone of contention, and now I'm just moving into the other ones. So we'll see.
We have found back of closets extremely useful for storing boxes and bottles. Just saying.
Okay, nice.
You need to have deep closets, though. You know, and deep pockets as well.
Joseph,
the second seems the more appropriate.
No, it's like Jenga with the box.
I've had to have an extension built on, haven't you guys? Just to fit all your booze.
That's a worthwhile investment, if you ask me.
It really is.
Weren't we talking, George, about turning the cupboard under my stairs into a cellar of some sorts?
We were pre-lockdown.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Let's do it, mate. You see, guys, I'm more than happy to come round and help you make space so that you can buy more whiskey. Don't you worry about that.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
It is.
I don't know if you heard that. That was Libby in the background just laughing.
Sorry, mate. We digress.
No. It's totally fine. I'm kind of loving this chat, you know. Somebody laughing in the background at you spending even more money on whiskey. It's familiar when somebody doesn't quite understand your passion, addiction to buying whiskey. Yeah. Especially when it's like, you've got so many bottles that are opened. What are you going to do with this one? Well, I'm going to open it, aren't I?
Absolutely.
100%. Just on the 18, it doesn't really have enough justice in us tasting it in such a short period of time. Somebody said dark maple syrup there as well. All of these lovely sweet notes, dark maple for me 100% is there. Start to work with those aged, you know, so those leather notes or those tobacco notes, these Dunnage like warehouse floor notes that I love for this whiskey. They work really well in unison with the sweeter flavor notes that you get. And I think that's what carries this whiskey so much, because it could be ridiculously unbalanced. It's all Oloroso, and Oloroso is a really, really big cask. PX is a bit easier to manage than Oloroso, believe it or not, although you would expect, you know, the notes you get from Oloroso, these lovely big sweet fruit notes, from PX to be easier to manage. It's actually Oloroso that's a bit more difficult to kind of work with. But what they've done here is made sure that the sweet notes are present, but that lovely drying aspect of the Oloroso kind of cuts through pretty quickly on this whiskey. And that could be quite a negative attribute, but that's the skill at Glendronach. One of the distillery liquid, that lovely distillate style, that robust Highland malt, coming from the mash, coming from all that reflux in still, means that it can stand up to that full maturation in Oloroso sherry. It's a real, I mean, it's a real treat. It's a real skill to create this whiskey, and I suppose that's why it's got such a great reputation as being the sherry bomb. I think sherry bomb is a great way to describe it, but I'm sure if you've got a little bit left, you're going through it, and you've tried it before anyway, I'm sure you're gonna get a lot more finesse out of this as you sit and enjoy it more and more and more. Finally, I just want to, sweet. We're still getting sweet, but in the mid palate, we're starting to dry out. Sweetness is coming back. Then we're getting all of those lovely leather and tobacco and age notes. And then mouth is just coated with that lovely oily attribute that you get from all of the Glendronachs. It's a stunning whiskey, especially at that price, George. 100%. It's an absolute bargain, and it's a real treat. This is one that you're not. This is one that you have at the back of your cupboard, I would say, most of the time. You're not really rolling this out for too many people. Yes, they absolutely do. Every cupboard does need a Glendronach fix. Tasted like Museum of London Dockland smells. Yeah, Jacqueline, that's good. Yeah, 100%. Just in case somebody's went in and bought them all out of your local off sales or from Soho Whiskey Club. Okay, so we're going to go on to the final whiskey of the night. We're going to run a little bit over, but if everybody's okay with that, then so am I. Oh, that's quite interesting. Oh, that's cool. I love that. Thanks for that fact, Jacqueline. I don't know if everybody's seen that, but the Museum of London used to be a sugar warehouse. That's a very cool fact. Okay. Final whiskey of the evening is the Glendronach Portwood. This is a new addition to the family.
So as I said to you earlier, Mick, when we were just chatting before we came on, and we let everybody else in, I didn't know where you were going to put this, whether you're going to put it before the 8 and then go through the Glendronach as we know them, or if it was going to be at the end. I'm intrigued to ask you why you've decided to put it at the end.
I wanted to put it at the end. Now, I don't really like putting anything before 18 or after, to be perfectly honest, but we can't really do anything from doing these tastings. You just got to get the 18 in and kind of move on. Just get a good bit of water in your mouth and kind of try to move on. I like to leave it to the end because it does have the addition of Portwood, which I think brings a lot of fruit to the table. It's maybe a little bit surprising for people to try something like this in a core range from us. I like to finish with it because it's really light and it's really fruity, and that's why I love it. It's also no age statement, which I think after trying all of these age statements, it's nice to try something with a non-age statement and see the quality that is still there. We don't need to stipulate age to determine whether we've got a great whiskey in our hands. The color here,
Having tried it, Mick, and then going back to the 8, I think you're spot on to put it in the order that you did. As in,
that's good. That's good to know.
I think going Portwood and then trying to go through, you wouldn't really taste this as much, and then sticking it at the end works really well.
Works really, really well. So we've got like a little kind of burnished red vibe. So we're on like maybe like a antique kind of gold vibe, and then it's got this kind of burnished red going through it, which we're going to attribute to the port cask, really, aren't we? It's a nice little changing color from the rest of them, and it tells its own story in its own right without even tasting it or smelling the liquid. Have a little smell. This is great. I really love this. I love this as an introduction to Highland malt for somebody, as an introduction to Portwood finishing as well. I think it's fantastic. It's a really accessible whiskey, and it's really good value as well. So we're getting like a lot of vanilla, super duper creamy. Strawberry jam is the official note, but for me, it's like strawberry bonbons is my personal flavor note for it. Raspberry souffle, cooked raspberry, yeah, 100% pinkish tints. Turkish delight, oh, that's such a good one. That's a really good one. I'm surprised I haven't picked that one up. That's one of my mom's favorite chocolates. Yeah, lots of forest fruit, and that's from that port cask. So when we get a port cask, we're all going to know we're going to get loads of forest fruit from it. Raspberries, blackberries, these kind of vibe going on. The blackberry, the raspberry, these hedgerow really tie back into the traditional flavor profile of Glendronach. Valley of the Brambles. Obviously brambles create blackberries. So to use port makes sense because we do have a lot bramble flower aspect always in, and bramble fruit in Glendronach. So to add the addition of a port cask complements that, and it again strengthens what we do. We're always building flavor at Glendronach. We're always trying to make a really balanced whiskey with the flavor aspects really complementing each other. That rich, creamy vanilla is for what really draws me to this whiskey and why I think it's a really great introduction. Sorry, excuse me. Okay, you're gonna have a little taste now. All of that's there, the fruit, so fruit laden, lovely sweet cherry, really nice blackberry notes, little bit of strawberry coming through for me as well. Fig rolls, oh, that's a blast from the past, the fig roll. Oh, should have got that straight away. I've been eating fig rolls at this table since I was a kid. Go back in again, sorry, excuse me, and you get again the orange, So these bramble, orange, honeyed malt notes are present throughout all Glendronach. In some cases, like the 18, it starts to develop and become a different flavor. But especially in these lower ages or these non-age statements, those flavor notes are really, really, really prevalent. As I said, it's a new example, relatively new release in our range. It's something that we're really proud of. And it really works. It really, really works to complement with that traditional distillery style. It's just so cakey, I just get all of these different cakes. I feel like I'm in a bakery. I'm not in a patisserie here. I'm not in some fancy patisserie. I'm in a bakery. I've just ordered a square of like Victoria sponge with jam on, and I've asked somebody to put a mountain of custard all over it. And that's like where I am with this. It's a relatively straightforward in terms of some of these flavor notes, but it just delivers so much. And you still have that oiliness, still have that lovely like oily character from that you expect to get from Glendronach. It's really stunning, and it's one that I'm definitely going to pour for my mum at the end of this. I hope that she enjoys it. Trying to convert her to Scotch.
What's the introductory maturation on this, mate? Is there ex-bourbon in this as well? Is it basically like the 8 transferred into port?
No, this is all sherry and then into port. Okay, so it'll be a blend. Sorry?
It's almost like the 12 and then into port, is it?
Yeah. The age statement, I cannot tell you age here. We just don't talk about it with this at all. You know, even ballpark age. It is non-age statement. But yeah, it's going to spend time in PX and Oloroso and then be transferred to port. Yeah, and then finish there.
Michael, quick question from me, if I may. What's the length of the port finish, roughly speaking? How long are you leaving it in port?
Yeah, we don't officially talk about how long we're aging it in port. I'm sorry. It's a relatively new whiskey. These bits of information will come with time, as you'll well know. But when we're releasing stuff with a non-age statement, we prefer not to talk about. It will come with time, and I'm sure when I find out, you'll find out. I haven't been told because we're not talking about it in terms of age statement, unfortunately.
If you weren't talking about it in terms of age, do you know like what kind of port cask it's aged in, or where the port casks come from?
So it's going to be a ruby port cask for this one, for sure. So it's going to be a ruby port cask. The origin of the port cask, no.
Okay.
Portugal.
Porto.
Portugal. I gathered that. Thanks, George. That was good.
Maybe even fig rolls, balance, blend of whiskey and port. A lot of forest fruits. The Turkish Delight, no, I'm really, really pleased with. I really love that. Maybe you're getting that because there are some kind of little woody notes in here. So sandalwood is one of the official notes, and it's definitely there on the nose at the start. Maybe that is what's going together with this fruit. Also, you're going to get some chocolatey vibes coming through from a port cask and a PX cask as well. And they're kind of coming together to give you that Turkish Delight vibe. I'm definitely going to use this Turkish Delight note now, Johnny, because I love it.
Nice.
Please, can you stop
That's
saying,
reviews.
just tell him it was a rubbish tasting note and use it.
I'll dine out on that for years to come.
You won't, mate. You won't. I'll find something.
Has anybody any other questions? Have you any other history questions or anything about production? Sorry?
I have a question. I'd tried the 18-year-old in the club, probably at the recommendation of George or someone. And the other day I bought a Glendronach on an auction blind, and I don't really know what I've bought. And it's the 2003 13-year-old.
Right.
And I don't know how I've not opened it. I've not tried it. I've just bought it blind. Where would that sit in relation to? Sorry.
How much did you buy it for, mate?
I paid 90 quid for this.
Fucking hell, you've got an absolute bargain, mate.
Have I? Tell me about it, because I bought it knowing I liked the 18, but it seemed cheap.
Yeah.
Has it fit into the range?
I haven't tried that, but do you want to send me a photo and the full list, and I can get you more information on it?
The bottle, no.
No. Do you want me? Even if you hold it up there, I'll take a photo, and I could definitely get back to George with some more information on it. I mean, we release single casks, so many of them each year that I haven't even tried that.
It's a 13-year-old 2003.
Okay, and what's the cask makeup of it?
It says Oloroso, and this is
Oloroso.
It's cask number 45490, and there's 660 made. This is 196 out of 660. So I can
definitely get you information on that. But
that'd be great, because I just took a punt on it really. But you think I've got a bargain, George?
Yeah, absolute bargain, mate. That would be a 300 the bottle of whiskey, I would have thought. And we were talking earlier about allocations, and Malcolm's allocation dropping down to like one bottle recently because everybody wants it, and Malcolm doesn't get any. That's the kind of bottle that I was talking about. So those are the ones that people really want. You got a really good buy. What I would say is open it now.
Really? Okay.
So
this new Whiskey Bull auction, I don't know if people have seen it. This Whiskey Bull there's some great stuff on there, real bargains.
So hey Neil, I'll pay you $110 for it.
I didn't hear who said that.
Well, I'll pay you $110 for it now.
You're all heart, mate. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
He's talking about £1.10.
I give 111.
I'll give you £150 bar tab for it.
Okay, thank you. We'll discuss it offline. Right.
That's the offer of the evening for you, George.
Love it. Goodbye, mate, and yeah, you'll enjoy that.
Very goodbye.
Open it. That, like, when you can get a really good or interesting whiskey that's quite sought after for a good price, open it, because what?
I think it's because this whiskey bull auction is a new thing, and there's some there's lots of, I think, inexperienced people, so it's a good place to be. There's one live at the minute as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I hope you enjoy. If you've got any left, enjoy the rest of your wee drams. If you have any other questions that I didn't cover, you can give me a little message, or you can give George a little message, and we can get the answers to those questions to you.
Yeah, so Mick, wow, thank you. Just to quickly run through the drams that you've got online at the moment. The 8-year-old is $34.95. The 12-year-old is $39.95. Then we had the 15, which is $56.95. Unbelievable price. And the 18, under 100 quid, $98.95. So you can jump on now. I'm going to have them on tomorrow as well. And then I have to take them offline because we've got stock check. So you've got 24 hours. Ladies and gentlemen, that was awesome tasting. It was one that I've been really, really looking forward to. As I said, I've been trying to get a Glendronach tasting in since I took over the club. I'm a huge fan of Glendronach. You've just tasted them. You can probably tell why. So I really appreciate Jack. Thank you so much, Jack Geffing from Mangrove.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for asking us, and thank you to Mickey. That's brilliant.
And Mick, mate, thank you so much. That was really, really cool. I think that everybody has very much enjoyed it. I can tell from the tasting notes that people enjoyed the whiskies and enjoyed the tasting. So thank you so much, mate.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks all for coming and trying Glendronach.